I'm Stacey Landberg, speech language pathologist, back here again with Kelli.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kelli, also an SLP, and we have a fun little home visit to share with you guys today. It's what is the discipline?
Oh,
It's
speech
a
therapist.
speech language pathologist, right? Yeah. Okay. So she's working with a parent doing routine-based intervention and coaching. So we'll watch the video together. We might pause and chat, and yeah, we want your feedback for sure. So share with the class.
Okay, so guys, while you're watching, practice your own coaching strengths and skills. So you can be using your strong observation skills. What routines do you see? What coaching strategies do you hear? What intervention strategies are happening? Be thinking about those because this is a great way to practice. And then you'll hear me and Kelli talk through some of those as well. Here we go.
What have you been thinking about that you'd like your focus to be, for this session this week going forward?
I think my focus will probably be, I'm just going to get everything. I just think my main thing is what we had already talked about as far as like me like waiting more. And then also, but like with him, I would say waiting and like following his lead more.
Okay.
I feel like I am very like, I'll try to throw things on him like, we are going to keep saying more right now because I want to say more versus kind of listening to what it is he's saying.
Yes.
And following what he's saying, or even smaller actions like doing more. Like he started doing some weird breakdancing situation on the floor, and I like copied him, and he thought it was the funniest thing that ever existed. And so it's just like doing more play that entails me just doing whatever it is that he's doing. And that's why I really do like, especially like with our sessions, because like you always catch what he's saying. So you'll start saying it. So then it makes me like, either say what he's saying and stuff. Right. But I want to also start doing that like with his acting.
Right.
To maybe get him to like, continue the actions or continue
Yes. And I think we've mentioned this before, like if you imitate him and then just after a few times of imitating him, just change it a little bit, same activity that he's interested in, but change the action, and see if he'll imitate you. That's wonderful. I know last session, he just found those coins in that cup and or I think you gave him the cup, but he was really into that because he had discovered
No, do not rip that.
So yes, I think that's a wonderful idea. And then also if he's into something and you follow his lead, you can work on those taking turns with him too. And he'll be more engaged if it's something that he's chosen. I love that.
I know good one. You are not trying to eat. Are we? No. Well, you can't eat erasers. That's not what we can do today. So you wanted to? Okay.
Oh, you're gonna be mad at mom for trying to play.
Oh, I took it. He was trying to eat an eraser on the pencil. He got mad. Yeah. And now he's just trying to be. Oh, and then what was so funny? So he had so many little things that he was doing funny, but where are you?
Yeah, that's perfect. I can see all great.
Where are you? Where are you? No, come here. No, where are you? Super secret mission under blanket. Super secret mission under blanket. Hey.
And it was you that I talked about the people play games with, right? The other week. Was that you with like peekaboo and spinning him things?
Yes.
Like just games where it's just you and him doing things back and forth. Okay.
Yeah. Because I was telling you, I was like, I feel like I sometimes try to like overcompensate by switching from like toy to toy to toy to just.
And he just wants
to.
Yeah.
He literally just wants to play with me.
Yeah, and he's so much more engaged when it's just you and him,
Yeah.
And not even toys involved.
Hey. Oh.
Well, let's see. Following his lead, what do you think he's trying to do right now?
He's doing his close his eyes game and go with it.
Okay, so let's see. Yeah, how could you use this?
Let me see. Wait. You can't, how can you see me squint my eyes if your eyes are squinted? I don't know, because every time I see him, his eyes are closed.
Yeah.
So I don't
Well, that's okay, because even if his eyes are closed, he can still, he can still hear the sounds you're making. And I bet, even though he's squinting, I bet he's still looking.
Mom's gonna attack. Mom's gonna attack. Mom's gonna attack. You are a very, very strong monster.
What do you think, Kelly? Should we discuss a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
So precious. Oh my gosh.
I know. I was feeling a little nostalgic for the virtual visits because practically my whole caseload is back to in person, which I'm also grateful for. But man, there were some amazing opportunities coaching during the pandemic. And I just feel like so many of us learned to coach. Like, so many people were just like, I'm new to this. And now I'm not going to prop the child up there, thankfully. And it's cool to see. So I was, feeling a little nostalgic for some of that. One of the things I was going to ask you about, so normally we come in and we talk about all the coaching strategies we see. And I'm thinking, I have this I want to take this back a little step, because I think we often take for granted that those of us in early intervention, we already know all the intervention strategies, right? Like the things that we teach parents. But this, now I'm teaching graduate students and they're learning the intervention strategies. And I'm like, oh, this is such a cool example of conversation about what intervention strategies the mom has already learned, and how, the SLP Morgan is like scaffolding, and how we can see how she's scaffolded, because mom talks about, I really want to wait, give him more pause time. So that's that intervention strategy of like give a time delay, right? Because we know when she waits, there's going to be an opportunity for him to take a turn. What other intervention strategies stood out to you, if any?
She was imitating him a little bit. And, I think that Morgan talked about that in the beginning. She had said, let's work on changing the action to see if he'll imitate you. So that's definitely a strategy worth reviewing, and then just milking, because like you were saying, it's so second nature to us to talk about it. So like really going in like deep onto that. And then just doing these verbal routine games are some of the most valuable routines in early intervention. So yeah, they were doing that. Let me think.
They were doing the
she was using sounds, just silly sounds. It wasn't about the language and the phrases and the words, just sounds to engage him.
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot, because mom said something too at one point about like, I'm going to follow his lead, I'll imitate him. And then she thanked Morgan. She was like, in our sessions, you're so good at pointing out the sounds or things he might say. And then she goes, but I also want to imitate like his actions. So that, even that dialogue, and then when Morgan says, yeah, and you can imitate his action and then maybe change it a little bit. It's like, if mom didn't have the foundation of follow his lead, imitate him, then Morgan wouldn't be ready to scaffold and say like, once, you're already there, now we can just change something slightly, modify it. So it's like, you see how, and that's through Morgan's coaching, right? Like her problem solving discussion with mom. Yeah.
And like all of these strategies, they're so great independently, but you're right. Like we do need to scaffold. We do need to make sure they have that basic understanding of waiting and why that's valuable. Because if we just jump into imitating, then we're going to have to backtrack eventually, because most parents will need that guidance on waiting before their child says a sound. Like sometimes it takes waiting for the child to produce a sound or an action for us to imitate. So we're going to have to backtrack anyway. And this mom just has built such a capacity. You could tell, like, she came in hot in the beginning, just like knew what she wanted to work on, knew what she wanted to improve on, or what she's doing great. She's been like obviously watching Morgan. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and I feel like she was also like, hey, I know this visit isn't just about me talking. And she just like all of a sudden does the action. Like there's not even usually I like to have a conversation with the parent that's kind of like, so which one of those strategies do you want to try? Like in what routine?
Yeah.
And then kind of like set it up a little bit. And this mom's like, all right, let's do it. And she just gets on the floor and does it. Like, I'm just going to start imitating him, which yeah, for me, that just says like, okay, Morgan has really set the stage well. That mom knows what happens in these visits. It's like, we talk, we plan, there's action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just watching it kind of naturally, you know, she went with the flow, and like watching it for the first time, like I'm used to, you know, supervising newer clinicians or SLPAs, working with students. And so when I'm first watching it, I was thinking, you know, should we, you know, there's like define the relationship. Should we define the routine? Should we define the strategy? Because I like to, you know, do that so they know what we're working on, and, you know, we kind of go in with a plan. So I was curious to see how it was going to play out with just, you know, like rolling with the homies, going with the flow, you know, and it worked out really nicely. And Morgan found times to insert some of those reflection questions, or, you know, try to talk about like a new strategy to use in the moment. And it was a very dynamic session because you had him, he was energetic, ready to play, and you had mom like trying to listen to both, and, you know, they figured it out.
Totally. That's a really good observation. Like mom's really working hard here to like engage him, try to join him, and also check in with Morgan, learn, listen. She's kind of like wanting some feedback, and she's saying that thing about like, well, if I'm imitating him closing his eyes, but he can't see me. And it's not so much about in that moment, I don't think it's so much about what the child does as mom's getting the practice of like, just spot the things that we can imitate, because then it becomes more second nature. And Morgan was like observing for a long time. Sometimes I feel like I have to jump in sooner, but it's like, don't stop before the magic occurs, right? Like something's gonna happen eventually if the parent and the child keep engaging.
Yes. You know what it's like? It's like when we're, you know, talking to parents about waiting as therapists, we often coach them to wait a little bit longer than feels uncomfortable, you know? And I think that's a good exercise for therapists to do when starting to observe is waiting longer than feels uncomfortable for that magic to happen, and just, you know, so that you can see as much as possible. And then families know like, okay, this is what observation feels like. They are going to be watching me for a while. You know, if the therapist feels that pressure subconsciously, like they need to jump in, try to fight it because the magic can happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'll even sometimes like say it out loud. Like, I'm like, oh, I know, you know, especially with the reflection questions to parents, sometimes there's that really long, awkward pause. And I was teaching, you know, my graduate class about that. And I was saying how, you know, they'll see me do the same thing to them. Like I'll ask them a question and I'm like, just gonna wait here. Someone will answer eventually. So it does get faster because like they learn, okay, like we know we're gonna have to answer. And I think parents also get comfortable with that too. They're like, okay, these pauses are a natural part of our sessions and it gives us time. Yeah, those are my thoughts that I had written down. If you want to add anything else, that's great, or we can keep watching.
I think we're good. Yeah, let's keep watching.
Awesome. Okay.
So he obviously wants to be under the blanket. So maybe is there a way that you could make it harder for him to get under there? So he needs to ask you for something?
Okay, twist, jump, jump. Twist, jump, twist, jump, jump, twist, and jump. In it. Twist, jump, jump.
Or what does he do if you get under the blanket? I know you kind of need to spot him when he's jumping, but if you put your head under it.
I feel like he'll probably try to join me. Let's see.
Well, that was a different sound, my moo.
Open your eyes.
All right, what if you, next time when you pick him up, what if you just stop and just hold him still for a minute?
Okay.
And see what he does. Yeah, so that was good. That was great.
You should go under. No, you just want to close your eyes, answer, but it's all dangerous. All dangerous.
You are stressing your mom out.
Right.
Hi.
Come here.
Boo.
Why don't you?
Boo is definitely a good sound to model, and Boo is a good one to work on because he loves these people games, and buh is one of the earlier developing sounds. So modeling Boo a lot to see if he'll try that is a good one.
Okay.
He definitely likes being under the blanket.
Yeah.
This mom has awesome energy. I feel myself being like, oh, if I was doing all that, I'd be like so well regulated. I feel like I might work out in it. I just love seeing her. Yeah. What else did you think of when we were watching that?
Watching that just made me just reflect on how simple play like that, not simple, I mean, mom's putting a lot of energy into it, but you know what I mean? It doesn't take these fancy toys or, anything structured to work on language and to work on interaction and engagement.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you go into these houses and there are so many toys to play with, which are routines, and we want to embed into routines and embed into play, but really these are so powerful, and like you could just spend so much time doing intervention in this space, or like when in doubt, like let's just do a verbal routine or a people game,
Totally. And it seemed like mom got that because she even said earlier in the video, like he literally just wants me, and you saw that.
That's
and
all it takes.
Yeah, I loved when Morgan was like, she was really trying to see like, how can I make this feel, like we're getting to something. Because sometimes you do feel like you're observing, you're watching, you're sitting back, things are going well, parents are practicing all the strategies. It's like, what little thing can our expertise notice or add? How do we really support the family in the routine? And so, she just did that in action coaching of like, what if you hide under the blanket? What if you stop? What if you, she gave mom little ideas, and we saw when mom went under the blanket, like he came right toward her, right? And then when she shook him and Morgan's like, what if you stop? She's just showing mom like, mom knows what he wants, so she'll keep doing it. But Morgan's just showing her like how she can, anchor a strategy into that little moment. Like, oh, stop. He might make a sound to request, or he might move his body in a way that we can help show could create meaning for him.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's like the coaching sometimes is really subtle and natural. That's actually how it should feel, I think. Like really just go with the flow, natural, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you could tell this mom, she understands that because she wasn't hearing Morgan's feedback and then trying it out and looking to her like, oh, well, that didn't work. What should we do? Like she was just so dynamic. So yeah, it's just, it shows what coaching should really look like. And that, I think also like for students and new therapists, it feels oftentimes like you need to be more active and less is more sometimes.
Yeah, because it's more natural, and that's what really EI is: natural environment, everyday moments, everyday
Mhm.
people, everyday activities. So why are we going to come in and do something so contrived or so, scripted or different? It's like, and we can just slowly build. Like I can picture that, gosh, I could picture what that same routine might have looked at before. Like mom thinking, parents, I've had many parents where it's like, but I think he should be sitting down and looking at a book with me. And then we take it back and we're like, yeah, but he's wanting to move his body and maybe seek, get some sensory input or regulation going, and that's all appropriate too. So how do we meet him where he is? And maybe they were engaging for 1 minute and now it's like 30 minutes, right? So it, the rest of the audience and us, we're not seeing all the history of how we got to wait time, following lead, turn taking,
Right.
but like it does happen over time, right?
Yes. And that I feel like is the key to coaching, is that it's harder for us to then explain to them like everything you were just saying about, well, we need to, see what they're interested in. It's so much easier to just foster reflection from the very beginning so that we're not the ones sharing all of this outright with them and having to come back to it, these things that you've said before and hoped that they've held on to, because we're helping them to say it and adding in to their reflections. And if we can kind of foster that from the beginning, it makes the process so much easier.
Totally. Yeah. And then the parents are used to that type of conversation with us,
Mhm.
that, well, and then if they try it out through the week, they get to report back like, hey, we talked about this. For me, one of the goals, so in our last like peer-to-peer meeting we had, we talked about like our own goals and what we're working towards. And one of them for me is my wording of things. It's sometimes really challenging for me to see something going well, wanting the parent to also see it, wanting them to make a plan, wanting them to reflect on it. It's kind of a lot, right? So, I was thinking like, how would I move this in action coaching in the moment, which is really hard for a lot of early interventionists to actually do. Like we talk about it, but we don't actually see it. So seeing it is really cool. But then how do we move that into a plan and a reflection? It had me thinking like maybe some questions I might ask mom would be, you know, um, today you followed his lead, you imitated him, you were able to use that wait time or a pause in these specific moments, right? Like hiding under the blanket and waiting for him to come to her, right? Like I might remind her of those moments, like she moving him and then stopping. And then I might say like, how does that feel? Or like, did that feel like it's helpful? How might and then like based on parents' response, we go from there. So like, how do you want to practice that this week? Are there any other routines we might try that in? And then the nitty gritty, right? Like, so if mom says, yeah, I want to practice that in the bath, well, it's like, where? Like, are we going to practice it? That's when we have to get really specific. And sorry, I'm going off on a tangent now because I'm just thinking of all the examples. But like
No.
if we save only like 3 or 5 minutes for reflection, there's no time to like hear about the bath time routine and then say like, oh, so when you fill up the water this much, like what if you turn it off? Like, do you think that would be a moment he might be like, hey, it's not full enough or something, like it takes a lot of time to kind of like talk through the plan, don't you think?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's all these micro steps in it, right? That could just we could spend, you know, a whole session talking about like the first second and a half of the routine. And but yeah, and if we're not saving all of that time at the end to really prioritize it, then it just becomes very general when we do check in at the next session, because they've got this whole routine. And so, you know, they're going to generalize and say, oh, it went well, or this was hard. But, you know, again, setting that tone of getting into the nitty gritty when we're talking about what strategy they're going to use, where are you going to use it, how are you going to do it? It just sets that tone. Yeah.
And it's so much easier for them to know, like, for you to say like, oh, okay, so you're going to do wait time at, you know, when he's washing his hands, like before you give him soap, because he wants to make bubbles, right? Or whatever it is. It's so much easier for the parent to come back and say like, he actually didn't want bubbles this week, so we did it here. Or he loved it, but the next thing I want him to do is like, instead of just the reach, I want him to vocalize or something, right? It's just so much easier to scaffold. And the parent knows, because we can say like, oh, do you want to try it now? Right. And then we get our practice in the routine, we troubleshoot together. Yeah, it's like that dance like we talked about in some of the other videos.
Yep.
Yeah. So those are the main takeaways for me. Anything else that you want to talk about, Kelly? Or we could go into our reflection question for the audience.
I think that's all for today. Yeah.
I love watching it. It's a great one.
What?
I love this home visit, this video.
Yeah, this could definitely be great to show families who are new to coaching. You know, because not only is this a sample of what coaching looks like, but it's a sample of how communication and engagement is everywhere. And this is a great opportunity for us to work together, you know, whether they like for all different families. Like I was saying before, we have families who, you know, have all of this stuff and all of these different routines, and then, you know, kind of minimalist families or lower income families who worry, you know, do I have enough for you to do therapy? But like, you're enough. You are enough, and I'm here for you. Like, and so I just think this would be a great clip to show families when you're first starting or who are feeling a little hesitant.
Yeah. And if you are a parent watching this, like, you know, just know like these home visits look different for every family, because every family has their own routines, and we are there to meet you where you are in that moment and whatever your priorities are on that day. All right. Well, any takeaways for our audience?
Should we do a little reflection question?
I love those.
Okay. I have one for today. So we were talking a lot about this mom's capacity, and we don't get to see her from the beginning of therapy, of course, when she first started, but I imagine that she and Morgan have really fostered, you know, a capacity together. So a question for our listeners would be, how am I, as a early interventionist, fostering and expanding the capacity of the caregivers I'm working with, and what are the signs of that capacity expansion or lack thereof?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm already
Juicy.
I'm already thinking how like Morgan set the stage for that, like asking mom, you know, what strategies, and then building from mom's strengths. I guess maybe she could, like, not to criticize her, 'cause she's an amazing clinician, early intervention speech therapist. I guess what I would say is, if I wanted to challenge Morgan again, it would just be to even spot more of mom's strengths. Like, I love how you're, you know, giving her more specific feedback, which she did do, but I bet, and I bet she's done that all along, which is why mom knows her role and just jumps right in with stuff, because she does have that increased capacity to do so.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not seeing the whole session, but so this is definitely not any kind of, obviously it wouldn't be a criticism because we're not seeing the whole session. I'm just kind of like piggybacking off of what you said. It would be really valuable again at the end to in terms of structure, find ways to have mom really specify what she did, like what worked, what didn't work, so that, yeah, she's saying it and that Morgan is reiterating all these great things that she did, so that, you know, she knows if she didn't realize it, because there is a lot going on, it's very dynamic, that, you know, they have time to really go back to it and remind each other.
Yeah, definitely. Great little tidbits and reminders there, Kelly. Thanks for being here again.